Welcome to You've Got This with Sarah Hamaker, a podcast to encourage and equip moms along their parenting journey. Join Sarah each week as she interviews dads and moms like you and discusses the joys, challenges, and rewards of raising kids.
Hi, and welcome to this week's You've Got This. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker, and today I have with me Christine Stevens with Sleep Solutions by Christine. And I love the title of your business, Christine, because it makes me feel like there is a solution to sleep. I love that. So she is a certified pediatric sleep consultant and coach. She works with exhausted parents who tried everything to get their kids to sleep. And today we're going to talk not just about babies, but about older kids, maybe teenagers even, who need their sleep. So welcome, Christine.
Thank you for having me.
Now, why do my first question, because this has always intrigued me, why do we obsess about sleep when our kids are babies, but we seem to virtually ignore it once they hit like that 3-4 mark?
Well, I think we obsess about it because we're always trying to be, and when the kids are young, babies, we're trying to be the perfect mom. We're trying to do absolutely everything right, and we want to make sure that that everyone knows we're doing things right, even if we make a mistake. But I think as kids get older, you've got a lot of things going on. Sometimes there are other kids. Now there's new siblings coming into the picture, and they've changed. They're kind of little people at this age, and so they tell us what they like or what they don't. And so I think a lot of parents really just kind of let things kind of go by the wayside and just, okay, well, let the child tell me what to do. So there can be some power struggles going on between the parents and the child of who's kind of running things. So I think parents really just, okay, we'll just get through it. Just get through it. You're fine.
Right. And I think one of the things that I know you probably know, but our listeners may not, is that sleep, when we don't get enough sleep, no matter if we're 3, 5, 15, 25, and an older adult, it really plays havoc with our brains and the way that we interact with the world. Can you talk a little bit about some of the I think it's maybe newer research that shows that sleep deprivation can really have an impact on the way we function? Absolutely.
I mean, they always talk about a lot of studies will talk about after the time change that's going to be coming up here in a few weeks, that the highest number of accidents happens the day after the time change because we're so exhausted. So another study has shown that getting 5 hours of sleep or less at night is the same as being intoxicated.
Oh my.
And so really, we as parents sometimes don't exactly prioritize our sleep. We're really just trying to get our kids to sleep. Meanwhile, we're not getting enough sleep. And so it does a lot of things to affect us. And it's not just our kids, but think about what you feel like after a, broken night of sleep where, for some reason your child has been up 1, 2, 3, 4, how many times a night. You really don't feel good the next day. Your performance at work probably is a little bit slower. Your reaction time's a little bit slower. It's hard to remember things. I know I meant to do that. Or I had some kind of deadline to meet. Maybe you're a little bit short with your spouse, your children, partner, whatever, because you're just so exhausted. Or things like it can affect things like your hunger. So if you've ever noticed that when you're just really tired, sometime in the afternoon to 3 o'clock, you're reaching for those unhealthy snacks or an extra cup of coffee just to fuel you to get through the rest of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so important. And if we as adults feel that, think of how much more our kids feel that.
Right.
And how they can't function. I often, even now, when my kids are having a really hard day controlling their emotions or just kind of getting along with one another, I often think, how much sleep have they gotten? And usually I can tell, they were up pretty late last night. So I'm not too surprised that they're kind of cranky the next day.
That's definitely a good way to look at it, because it's when you see something happening, like if we start to see, and we can see behavior issues in kids a lot of times when they're overtired and not getting enough sleep. Parents should kind of look at things like with a little bit of curiosity, kind of, well, maybe something's going on. Do I need to look into this? Are they getting enough sleep? Ooh, they were up a little late last night. Maybe we need to do something about that. So yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. Now, there's a few, I think, myths about sleep out there. So myth or truth, we're going to play a little myth or truth. Christine, are you ready?
All right, let's do this.
Okay. Myth or truth, we can catch up on our sleep. Is that true or false? Or partly true?
I would give it true.
Okay.
A little bit. Yes, you can catch up a little bit. But if you've been chronically sleep deprived for months or years on end, you may not be able to completely catch up on everything. But it is, during the week, it is possible to catch up a little bit. That's why we'll kind of tend to sleep in a little bit on the weekends, as our bodies are trying to catch up a little bit. But as for long-term sleep deprivation, it's very difficult to really catch back. You'll never completely catch back up.
Right. So for when our teenagers are like, I'll just catch up on the weekends, maybe some of the things we need to say, well, you can catch up some, but it's better to try to get a consistent night's sleep.
Absolutely. It is definitely better to get a consistent night of sleep when your brain is tired, instead of trying to power through and just say, I'll make it up later.
Right. Okay. Great. All right. Now another myth or truth. Chronic sleep deprivation in kids can mimic attention deficient disorders.
Absolutely true.
All right. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So it's kind of the what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the attention deficit, or is the child also sleep deprived? Which one is it? Because kids with attention deficit can tend to have more sleep issues. So it's kind of what came first. But yes, a child that is chronically overtired and exhausted, not getting enough sleep, can mimic those same characteristics as a child with attention deficit. And you'll see things like they just can't sit still. Some kids will literally run around in circles giggling. They can't focus on anything. So some of those characteristics can be similar. So it's kind of to look at the child's sleep if you're considering something like a attention deficit.
Right. And again, I noticed in my own kids, if there's been a time where we've on vacation and we're not getting a consistent sleep like we try to do, I find that, yes, they're more hyperactive. They can't sit still. They're antsier. They can't focus. And when I think about those kids in school settings, it's really kind of terrifying to think of chronic sleep deprivation, how these kids are not able to function in school.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's hard. So I know it's hard for them. All they're trying to do is just like the rest of us. They're trying to just keep going. Well, that comes out in different kinds of behaviors.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So for parents out there, if your kids are getting a little squirrely in school and you're wondering why, look at their sleep. And start with that, because that's an easier thing to fix. And if that works or that helps, then you're halfway one, helping them to do better in school. Okay, so now myth or truth. Teens are biologically wired to stay up late and sleep in.
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say true. True. Well, it's so you look at, if you read Matthew Walker's book, it's called Why We Sleep. He talks about the difference in the circadian rhythms of babies versus teenagers versus adults versus older adults. And one of the things that research is starting to show is that teenagers really are, their natural sleep pressure is actually a little bit later. And so this has been part of the later school start movement that's been coming around that a lot of us have heard about is we're trying to keep our teenagers where they're not tired in the evening, but then we're trying to get them up some are getting up at 5:30 in the morning. I don't even have to get up that early in the morning.
Right.
So that they can get to school. And they're saying that why don't we start to recognize some of this research that's coming out and say that why do we have to start our schools so early in the morning? So I would say absolutely true.
Okay, yeah, and I know with two teenagers in high school myself, I know that I can't get them to bed before, 10 o'clock, and they get up at 6:20. Now, they generally will be in bed by 11 because they know they need sleep. I preach sleep. I preach sleep in my home, Christine. You should be very proud of me because I know how important it is. And I know that kids left to their own devices, not talking electronic devices, but on their own, generally have a hard time knowing when to kind of shut down and go to sleep. So we highly encourage reasonable bedtimes, and we talk about all the ramifications of not getting enough sleep, including academic performance. So that's good to know. Okay, last myth or truth. Screen time interferes with our body's ability to fall asleep and get a good night's rest.
Absolutely true. And this goes for children, teenagers, adults, older adults, anyone. Even with a blue light filter, I know there are a lot of devices have that now, but even with that blue light filter, your brain is still active. But if you're not using something, if you're just sitting there watching TV, the blue light wavelength that's emitted from that device, whether it's a phone, a tablet, a TV, whatever, is telling your brain to stay awake. It's just like going outside in the sunshine and trying to wake yourself up. It's telling your brain, ooh, it's light out, it's time to stay awake. And so a really good rule of thumb is especially for definitely teenagers, they're probably one of the biggest culprits of this, or adults who are also really bad at it too, is really at least 30 minutes to 60 minutes before bedtime, cut the screens off. Do not let your teenagers keep their phones in their room. Yes.
Yeah. And we have that rule, and they have to park their device in the living room on a plug. They plug them in. And I must say they are pretty good about leaving them there because we've talked to them about this and we've said, look, your brain can't shut down. And, those will be there in the morning. Now they check it almost as soon as they wake up, and we're kind of like, I'd rather them check it first thing in the morning when they get up than keep on it all night. So we kind of are like, yeah, we're not gonna get all over them for that.
I think that's a great way. That is setting boundaries around sleep. That's exactly what you're doing, and that's probably one of the biggest things that I end up helping parents with children, older children, and teenagers is really setting those boundaries around sleep and saying things like, okay, you're not going to have your phone in your room at this time. It's time to plug it in. It's time to take it away. Same thing with maybe a younger child is, okay, an hour before bedtime, it's time to cut the TV off and let's go have some quiet play and let ourselves wind down and get ready for sleep.
So, speaking of winding down and ready for sleep, what is your favorite kind of bedtime wind down routine? What do you like to recommend or that you do yourself?
I love to try to do a little bit of family time. Sometimes kids get really, they miss their parents during the day. They don't get to see them. It's a really good time to just have one-on-one time with your child or with your children. You're just focusing on them. Well, dinner's already been done and, the dishes and stuff can wait till later, but really focus on that family time. So I have a 4-year-old daughter right now, and her new obsession is the game Uno.
Love that game.
She learned we taught her how to play it, and now that's like her favorite thing to do. And so my husband and I love to sit down with her in the evening. We've cut the TVs off. He and I will take our phones, put them away, so we're not engaging with us, but it is just one-on-one time with her. So pick an activity that you all like to do together and just spend 20 minutes focusing, just kind of that little bit of family time, focusing on your child, and it will do wonders to wind down.
Yes. And we often helped our children establish the bedtime routines, right? What are the things you should do before bed? Pajamas, brushing your teeth, making sure from our younger ones, making sure all your stuffies, stuffed animals, they call them stuffies, are in their bed because no one doesn't want to go find the one missing one right before bed. And reading to them, or now they read to themselves. So often they will get ready for bed a little early and then read until it's time for bed. They've enjoyed those kind of downtime routines. And then my older girls, when they're off their phones, they may be listening to music, but they'll often draw they will talk to each other, kind of a thing, or they might do some reading as well. Those kind of wind down routines I think are important. We need to help our kids recognize what's a good wind down, and maybe wrestling with your brother is probably not a good wind down 10 minutes before bed.
No, probably not a good idea. It's as long as you do things in the same order at the same time, roughly the same time every single night, we train our brains that it's time to go to sleep. Most of us don't exactly walk into our bedrooms and fall face first onto the pillow and go to sleep. Most of us will at least change our clothes, brush our teeth, maybe read for a few minutes, but just put that in place and talk with your children about, hey, what works for us? What's a good bedtime routine? Maybe you sit there with your child for a few minutes and just talk about their day. Again, another way to interact with them, find out what's going on in their lives, just to hear what they want to talk about. And I find a lot of parents find that that's just a great time to really focus on them. But just doing things the same way every single night, it's training your brain that it's time to get ready for sleep, and your kids will fall asleep much faster. You'll have less bedtime battles when you have a regular routine.
Yeah, and that I think that is so important, Christine. So before we wrap up today, what are your top sleep tips?
So with my top sleep tips, first one is that we've kind of talked about already, is make sure that you have a good bedtime routine. And they really don't need to take very long. It shouldn't take you 2 hours to get your child to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. It should take about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, but really shouldn't take very much time to get your child to sleep. Second tip is make sure that they're getting to bed at a reasonable hour. So for kids, at least, definitely, younger than teenagers, even at school age, whatever, 8:30 is the latest for bedtime. So they need a lot of sleep. Kids need somewhere between 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night. So give them a chance to get the sleep that they really, really need. And if you need to, do some relaxation before bedtime to make sure that they are getting that wind down time. The next tip is really to set boundaries around sleep. The biggest complaint I hear with parents that are calling me saying, oh my gosh, my kid's not sleeping. It's taking forever to go to bed. Bedtime routines, and it's taking 2 or 3 hours to get my child to finally fall asleep, and they're up all night long. The biggest thing is you've got to set boundaries. And you have to decide what that is as a family and what you want to do. When your child's asking you, oh, you know what, I don't want to have that stuffed animal. I'd like another one. It's not giving in to all of those additional requests and saying, no, it's time for bed. Kids learn very quickly what they can get away with. And you give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Every time, Christine, every time.
If you always read 2 books to a child at bedtime, they start coming going, can I have another one? Well, sometimes you have to say no. And they will figure out very quickly that, okay, 2 books, it's time to go to bed. And then the last one, and probably the most important one, is just to be consistent. However you get your child to fall asleep, just do it consistently. And so they know what to expect. You know what to expect, and it makes the bedtime process so much less stressful on everyone.
Yeah.
You have to be consistent. You got to do it, the same way every single time.
I love those tips. Those are great, and those are good for whatever age your child and your adults listening out there. It's important for us too to have those kind of routines in the same way and not keep thinking, I'll just check one more thing before we put our device down. Those are all excellent points. I really appreciate them. Well, you have been listening to You've Got This. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker. I've had Christine Stevens with sleepsolutionsbychristine.com. She's a certified pediatric sleep consultant and coach, and she helps exhausted parents everywhere get the sleep they need and help their kids to get the sleep that the kids need as well. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast of You've Got This with Sarah Hamaker. Sign up to receive notification of new podcasts and listen to previous editions at sarahhamaker.com. Until next time, remember, parenting might be hard sometimes, but don't worry, you've got this.